folks. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Adam Sanchez-Gray. I am the Assistant Director of Housing and Operations here at FIT. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the housing preferences questions on the housing application, which include emotional support animal, or ESA, and gender inclusive housing, or GIH, both of those processes. So let's talk about gender first. Gender can be broken down into a few different categories, as seen on your screen. For the purposes of gender inclusive housing, we're going to focus on gender identity, as this is the one that's going to be used to help us choose the best room for students, and that students can set their preferences on the housing application for. So over the last few years, FIT Residential Life has moved to restructure our gender inclusive housing process. And what we've done is we've tried to remove a lot of the barriers that our students faced when choosing to participate in gender inclusive housing. So we've removed all of the restrictions, any additional contracts or addendums that may go with that housing process, and we now include it in the roommate profile, which we'll see a screenshot of in a moment. We've also begun to convert some of our communal bathrooms into gender inclusive spaces, and we've opened up all of our room types, all of our buildings and accommodations to have the ability to be gender inclusive if the students in that specific room type or building so choose. This has helped us to move gender from being a predominant factor in housing and instead have it now become a equal part to the students' overall living preferences, as we can see on the next screen in their roommate matching questionnaire. So you'll see at the top of the questionnaire are the housing preferences, and this is where the gender inclusive housing and the emotional support animal question are located. They're both drop downs, yes and or no. So students can choose a yes or no. And what's interesting about these and we want to highlight during this session is that gender inclusive housing, we've realized over the last few years, sometimes students want to live with a particular roommate regardless of that person's gender, but then if that person were to leave, then they want a specific gender roommate after that. So we have helped to make students be able to navigate that and to have that experience. So what we've done is, regardless of how you answer either of these questions, the emotional support or the gender question, you can choose the roommate that you want as long as they meet the qualifications that they're a returning student or new student, depending on your status, and that they've completed their application successfully. So, for example, if you were to put no for this, but you wanted to pick somebody whose gender identity is different than yours as a roommate, you are more than welcome to do that. So why do we collect these then? We collect these because if there's ever a time when you have a vacancy in your space and we need to place somebody in there, we will go and use these to help us select the best new match of a roommate for you. So if you have a vacancy in your space and you have a yes for gender inclusive, we're going to place any student in there without looking at the gender of the student or the person in the space. If it's marked as a no, then we'll make sure that the two gender identities of those students match up. Same thing for emotional support animals. If you've marked yes, then we know that any roommate with an emotional support animal, whether it be a cat or a dog or a fish, is welcome to move into the space. If you've clicked no, then we will try to ensure that any roommate you potentially may get does not have an emotional support animal to the best of our abilities. We also understand folks have allergies to certain animals, so if you have any allergies or medical needs that would require you not to live with an animal, we strongly suggest that you put no to all emotional support animals living in your space. So how does gender inclusive housing work during actual room selection? So as you'll see, here are two screenshots that are really important. and we will also provide during each selection process for students. The first picture shows the different room options, and notice down here it says room gender and it says dynamic gender. Every single room during selection will showcase the room gender. What this means, if you glance to the right of your screen, it corresponds to what the room allows in terms of gender inclusive, right? So what we know is dynamic gender. If we go and check the table over here, it means the room automatically becomes the gender of the student who first selects it. So if I am a male student and I go in and pick Kaufman 103, Kaufman 103 now becomes a male identified room, and only other male students can choose that space. If the room is co-ed, please note co-ed the building versus co-ed as a room gender are different. So if the room gender is co-ed, then that means that room is gender inclusive, and anyone, regardless of their gender identity, is allowed to pick that space. So roommates can pick it together, or two different individuals can pick it as two different beds. There's male and female spaces, so a male space only allows males to pick that space, female only allows other females to pick that space. So it's really important that when you're going as a roommate group trying to pick a room, that you pick the room type that best works with your roommate group. What does that mean? So if I am in a two male roommate group, I can go ahead and pick dynamic gender, co-ed, or male, because all three of these will fit my roommate group's gender identities. Now let's say that I have a male and a female roommate group. I need to pick co-ed only, because if I pick dynamic gender, one of us is not allowed into that space, and if I pick male and or female, one of us will not be allowed into that space. So I need to ensure that I've picked co-ed as my room gender, so that way both me and my opposite gendered roommate are able to pick it. This also goes for folks who are non-binary or do not adhere to the gender system. They would also want to pick a room labeled as co-ed. Again, co-ed room gender, not co-ed the building. As always, our office is here to support, so if you have any questions or concerns about this process, please feel free to reach out. We can be reached at residentiallife@fitnyc.edu. Residential Life is all one word. Or you can give us a call Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 212-217-3900. We look forward to a wonderful next year with you and hope to hear from you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.